I'm really I agree with you, but I don't think the Egyptian government did the best they could. I mean, they can do a lot much better than they did.
Like what? I'm just kind of curious, as a Palestinian, I'm always wondering, we always criticize, but what more do we want the Arabs to do that they haven't already done?
Let her answer, please.
Actually, sir, we know that Egypt, and Israel have a lot of, what can I say, a relation, but, it's like behind the scenes. Like you announce something in the media and you do another things.
There are no relations behind the scene between Egypt and Israel. Our position is very clear. It is known to the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are very grateful for the efforts that we are exerting. So if you listen...
If you don't have that relations... It would be one of the few times in history that countries didn't have backdoor relations, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you don't have behind-the-scene relations, you don't have a diplomatic corps. I mean, you're paying people for doing nothing.
I tell you... Excuse me?
Look, if you don't have if you don't have back-channel diplomacy going on, you don't have very good diplomats.
Ghada, Karmi, you wanted to make
We are good diplomats. We are exerting every effort to help the Palestinians.
Exactly.
And if the Palestinians themselves
could the men cede to the woman on the panel, please?
Okay.
Look, I can't believe I'm hearing this. This lady's question is excellent. Do you know that before I came here tonight, do you know what's happening in Gaza? Have you looked at your televisions?
Yep.
Do you know how the Israelis are bombing the hell out of Gaza? Why does Egypt maintain relations with a state that does this to the Palestinians?
These relations have been helpful to the Palestinians all along. They allowed us to play a positive role. I mean, it is very easy to say what you say and let the Palestinians be bombed.
She asked you what Egypt could do. One thing it could do is show that it does not agree with the way Israel behaves, at the very least, by breaking off relations.
No, it's not a question of breaking up relations. These relations have been used to serve the Palestinian cause. And don't be demagogic by saying these things. You know that this relation is helping the Palestinians. We're trying to promote the cause of the Palestinians. And it is very easy for you to be here and say these things that are not true.
I would say, to some extent there's some truth in what you're saying.
I have to take exception to it.
Could we just have one speaker at a time, please?
No. I really have to take exception to this idea, because it's a throwback to the 1960s. What do you want them to isolate Israel again? That didn't help us, Ghada. It didn't help us. So let's start thinking in a different way. And secondly, the Palestinians have relations with Israel. And this is another typical example of how you are blaming Arabs because they're not more pro-Palestinian than the Palestinian official policy itself. And that is ungrateful and wrong.
Allow me to, I need to clear this once and for all. I need to clarify this, because you're going to hear this many
times.
Last
point on this question.
The Palestinians are obliged to treat with Israel because they are occupied by it.
No, we're not.
The others
we can refuse to negotiate.
Obliged to do this.
No.
And Egypt, which is a great country, is not obliged.
So there's quite a lot of division in the Palestinian Authority, isn't it, between two advisors?
I say that Egypt is helping the Palestinians much more than what you are saying.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Lady in the center, please. Yes, you. Could you stand up, please?
All right. I want to ask, Mr. Michael Tarazi said that expecting the Arab governments to help Palestinians is like expecting them to clear up a mess they haven't started. But then why is it that Arab countries like Kuwait choose to support the US in the Hurricane Katrina, a mess they haven't started, and not help the Palestinians?
That's a question for me, right?
Yes.
No, I agree. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, as human beings, do this. My problem is simply that we shouldn't impose upon these people a greater standard for involvement than we would to non-Arabs as well. Because in my view, this is a human disaster, not an Arab disaster, and we should all as humans be concerned about this. I'm not saying they shouldn't help Hurricane Katrina.
The mountaineers of Bolivia have the same interest as people from Morocco to Iraq in the Palestinian situation? I mean, I understand your argument about the great and the powerful perhaps is important, and I agreed in the beginning that the international community of the United States is certainly culpable in this situation, but I think it can't be absolutely universal. This is silly. The African peoples felt a particular responsibility to address the apartheid regime in South Africa. When, in all of these colonial situations, peoples whose identity are close to the victims, comes out. I really don't expect the villagers of some mountaintop in Bolivia to have the same attitude on this conflict as the Arabs.
We're talking about governments, not
I think we've
citizens
gone into this
Bolivia.
in some detail. Let me take a question from the lady in the second row.
This is for this side of the panel. I mean, the saying goes, keep your friends close but enemies closer. I don't see how you can find a resolution for the Palestinian people by just cutting all your relations with the Israelis. And
Cutting relations.
Right.
Yeah, by boycotting them, you know. First of all, if you're just looking at the Arab world, we don't make half the population. If you're looking at the Muslim world, that doesn't just incorporate the Arab world. Second of all, you talk about self-criticism. If there's anybody in the Arab government that we need to criticize, it's the PLO. Had they been clear and transparent, like the states, for example, we donated, the Arab countries have donated a lot of money. That's because there's this transparent system where we can communicate with. The PLO, who do you go to and where do you go?
You first.
Okay, yes, Ghada,
Look,
please.
I keep hearing this from various people.
So please answer it.
The PLO, well, allow me to answer it. The PLO and the Palestinian leadership and many things about the Palestinians can be criticized. There is no doubt about it. Nevertheless, we are here to discuss the role of Arab governments. And in reality, you talk about not isolating Israel. You know, I have to tell you, I disagree with you. If the policy had been to isolate Israel wholeheartedly and properly from the beginning, and it had continued, it would have been highly effective. I think we need to agree that Israel is not the friend of the Arab people, not just the Palestinians. It's not a friend of the Arabs. We need to understand this. Therefore, we have to actually find the best method to deal with it. Now, you may think it's through having relations. I happen to think that if you can isolate it, but isolate it not half-heartedly as the Arabs have done. Arab governments boycotts in reality, behind the scenes. In reality, we don't have relations with Israel. Behind the scenes, we have all kinds of secret meetings. If you do things properly, then you actually achieve results.
Gentleman's been waiting up there a long time. Can we get a microphone?
My question is for Ghada Karmi. So are you asking us to isolate the entire Arab world to re-isolate itself from Israel, and then again isolate itself from the only existing superpower in the world? How risky is that for us?
Yeah, well, of course it's risky. Of course, it's too late now. It's too late. And of course, my point all along...
So you're not asking for that now?
No, I was answering her that actually isolating Israel would have been extremely successful if it had been done consistently and properly from the beginning. But I actually take your point. That is one of the things that it is very depressing about all this, is that the fact is you have got this one superpower. The fact is that the Arabs made a strategic decision not to challenge either Israel or the superpower, to remain, for Arab governments to remain in power by virtue of American favor and American support, very often, not all of them, but very often. They made that decision. As a result, once you've got that sort of relationship, you have no room for maneuver. You have to obey orders.
All right, I'm going to take another question from a gentleman up there who's been waiting a long time. You, sir.
My question is directed to Mr. Tarazi. Isn't the fact that Palestinians have been living in refugee camps for over 50 years now enough evidence to say that the Arab governments have let down the Palestinians?
No. First of all, Jordan, I think, is the only country in the world that has ever taken in such huge numbers of refugees from neighboring countries and given them equal rights. I don't think you're going to find any place in the world that opens its doors up to refugees and automatically grants them citizenship. It doesn't happen anywhere, but it did happen in the Arab world with respect to Jordan. I'm not saying that Lebanon and Syria are justified in their treatment, but to extrapolate from Lebanon and Syria and then say the entire Arab world has failed the Palestinians, I think is simply unfair.
But Michael knows very well what the questioner is talking about. He's saying the Arab states didn't do anything in all those years to try and get those people, either to treat them as decently or to allow them to return to their country. They never did
Jordan,
either.
In Jordan, they're not treated decently.
I'll tell you about Jordan. If you stress me, Jordan took in the Palestinians for a very good reason, and they gave them citizenship for a good reason, and it was nothing to do, or very little to do, with being generous and humane. It was to do with building up Jordan, which was a tiny country with a tiny population, and I'm afraid it's cynical, but it's true.
And where else in the world have you seen a country like Jordan take in a majority of refugees of its population?
Because there's no other country I can think of like Jordan, which had a minuscule population and was desperate to form itself.
What other country has taken in that many refugees, period?
Look,